Okay, we go to session three. Four.
Okay.
What are the
Four.
what are the key points to focus on? When prepare for the EB-3 visa interview. Yeah, this is the question now. U.S. Consulate.
Uh,
Yeah. What
yes.
standard
So,
evidence is typically required to support an EB-3 application, and how can application avoid common mistakes? And are there any specific question or scenario during the interview that applicants should be prepared for? Okay.
well, I will say my general advice in many visa categories is you should be very familiar with your petition, what is in there, because that is what the officer is looking at when they are interviewing you. So
Right.
you need to be familiar with your job description. What are you going to be doing in this job? This is how you demonstrate your intent to work in this job. You have to think about this. You are moving across the world to take a job, possibly moving your family to a new country. It would be expected that you know what you're going to be doing. Where are you going to be living?
Your
Um,
your
how
weight.
much are how much is your wage? What benefits do you have? Which now is a very important part of it, because consular officers are looking at not only what if you can support yourself with money, but also any medical issues you may have. So knowing about your benefits that you are going to have for you and your family is really important. You should also be able to explain, how did you find out about this job, and who paid for what parts of the process, because they may directly ask you, for example, if that you paid the employer for
Yeah.
this
Right.
opportunity,
Right.
right? That is a common thing that and so that's obviously not allowed. You can't pay someone to give you a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so they're going to ask you those kinds of questions. But like I said, the embassy usually has a very detailed checklist, and like I said, a good document preparer can work with you to make sure you have everything in the format that is required. All the civil documents, the police clearances,
Has set
the
up.
everything you need
Yeah.
to have. Um, One other thing I mentioned before that's also very important for many people is showing that you can show that anytime you were in the United States that you maintained a legal status.
Right.
So that can be important for some applicants, and sometimes they think that consular officers can look up anything they want. But even if they can, sometimes it can be very time consuming, and so it's the burden is on you to prove that you had the legal status, not for the officer to dig around and find it.
Mm.
So you need to make the officer's job easy by
Easy.
coming prepared, right?
To
And
prove.
in a and as I mentioned before, you may also be asked about your intent to work in the job. So I do get a lot of people who maybe consider themselves overqualified
Overqualified.
for a
Yes.
job. And so this is a common concern. However, um, the EB-3 unskilled is a very good opportunity for people of any background to obtain a green card while they're also fulfilling a really important, economic role here in the United States, which are, assuming these kinds of jobs where we need workers. So, they definitely will have some understanding with their employer as to the expectation of the length of service in the job. But normally, these types of jobs, even though they may start out as unskilled, have many opportunities for advancement within the job. So it's important that you be able to discuss your longer term plans with the employer should the officer ask. There may be opportunities for management, for
Right.
moving into other types of positions once you've learned the job. You should know about other things like your training and that other kinds of things about what's going to happen when you get there. You have orientation, you have training,
Right. Right.
where yeah, that kind of thing, the details,
Mm.
so they know that this is something you are legitimately interested in and you're going to follow through with. Um, but just being overqualified itself is not a reason for a denial. It's that they have to understand that you have intent to work in the job. Um,
Right. Right.
another thing you may get questioned about that you might not expect is if you had long stays in the United States, some people think, well, I got 6 months. The officer said I could stay 6 months on my tourist visa, and I only stayed 6 months, so it's not a problem. That is not how it's viewed by a consular officer. If you have a very long stay on a tourist visa and you're a person of working age, they will want to know how you supported yourself. Because if you go to the US and within a certain period of time you start engaging in unauthorized work, it can be considered that you committed a fraud when you entered the country and that you misrepresented your purpose of your trip as tourism when really you went to work. So those are questions you should be prepared to answer if you've had long stays in the United States. All right.
Right. There's a lot of information you share. I think our audience is happy to listen right now.